So I disagree on both fronts, to be honest. And I think that the core premise here is that you're thinking because you built the tools, you gotta charge less for it. I don't agree with that. I think that you can build a toolkit and use it yourself and still charge a fuck ton of money to be using it.
So this is a problem I experienced. So what happened was that I was working with a client. They were having all of their business in Airtable. Do you know what Airtable is, Tom?
Yes, it's like a shitty Excel alternative, right?
Well, that's one way of phrasing it. Bye-bye sponsoring us, Airtable.
Yes, I didn't think about it. True, true.
The idea is this. It's like this Google Sheets that lets you kind of like be between a Google Sheet and a database. So you can do like special rows with like images and checkboxes and connect them and do like all these things. And it's a no-code solution, meaning you can create a database functionality without using any code. So that's Airtable. It worked pretty well for them up to this point where now they have a lot of customers and they're like, what the fuck is going on? Airtable is not the right solution. And they wanted to move to Postgres, which is a relational database that's a serious database that companies use and developers like. And I was like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. And in my mind, I was like, this should not be too hard, right? Because I can export the data from Airtable and just shove it into Postgres. And I was, boy, oh boy, I was mistaken. That's not easy. And I think I'm suspecting that they're trying to do kind of like vendor locking and stuff like that. But basically, they only allow you to kind of either export it as a CSV or to connect through their API and fetch the data that way and then write your own code and kind of migrate that there. With both are kind of annoying. You'd think that the CSV would be good, but I had a lot of problems because Airtable allows you to do something called foreign keys and roll-ups and stuff like that. And that basically means that you can connect different sheets, like in Google Sheets or different tables if you're a developer, between each other. And that's very hard to reference in a CSV. So it kind of breaks all the data. So I can't really migrate with the CSV. So I was kind of thinking and I was like, maybe I'll write some code. And I was like, no, never write code as the first solution. Try to think about some other solution. And I want to show you some things that I found and why they all fucking suck. So the first thing I found was a competitor to Airtable called UI Bakery, and they're super smart. They made this growth tool, which is basically an Airtable to Postgres migration tool. And you put your API keys and all that. If you're not suspicious of them stealing it from you, I don't think they are, because they want you to become a customer. And then you put all your Postgres information and they migrate it. Problem is, doesn't work. Like, I tried to do this for a while. It didn't work. It had errors. It didn't like, it's just, a marketing stunt. And I think it wasn't able to kind of handle the more complex cases. So that wasn't good for us. The next thing I was looking at was maybe there's something I can pay for and they would, fix my problem. So I found 2 or 2.5 solutions out there that kind of try to do it. One of them is WellSync, which basically you take your Airtable and it kind of knows how to sync it to wherever else you want. Didn't work for me either. And it had another problem where I had with the last tool that I'm going to show you, which is called High Touch. And it's indeed High Touch. It's not a good name. So High Touch also does the same thing as WellSync. Problem is, they're trying to solve a different problem. They're trying to solve syncing, okay? They're trying to real time or close approximately to real time. They want to always be able to move data from one place to the other. It's not a one-time thing, right? If something changed in the Airtable, they want to do all the magic of moving that into the Postgres or other data storage you have. And that's not the problem that I had. I wanted to just move it from Airtable because I don't want to use Airtable anymore. And both of these things are solving a different problem. Second of all, they didn't really work. Okay, so I did all of their onboarding, all of their setup. It didn't work. I'm a developer, and it didn't work for me. Like, I tried to get everything working. It almost worked with High Touch, but the problem was they wanted me to make the database exactly replicated on Postgres myself, which is a lot of fucking work. Why am I paying you if I need to create all of this, the schema of the database myself, all of the columns? So I was like, okay, there's a problem here. And my idea is this. Sorry, it took some time to explain. I just want a one-time migration tool, okay? From a source to a destination. I don't need syncing. I want you to create all of the columns yourself. I want you to import all of the data yourself. And I want it to be a one-time payment. And the cool thing about this is that it opens up a door to compete with all of these non-relevant competitors because it's a blue ocean the moment you're doing a one-time migration tool. So that's the idea. Tom, do you have any questions?
Yes, it sounds, not questions but comments. It sounds very similar to what WordPress does. So there's a tool, I'm blanking on the name now, that does like you pay one time, and then you can export as many WordPress sites as you want from one host to another. Essentially, it's used to migrate between hosting services. If you want to move between one hosting service and the other, you click a button, it pulls the database and everything and moves it over. But essentially, it's a MySQL to MySQL migration. So I don't think it applies here. What you're saying is you want to go from the proprietary Airtable Fakakta to over to Postgres. I'm just curious on how you would like build the thing. I think that's the interesting stuff, and then I can talk about go-to-market.
Yeah, so I do have to cheat and say that I didn't think about it too deeply, but on the tiny bit of thought that I did give it is, I think it's not a no-code or low-code solution. I don't think you can be a non-technical founder to solve this. I think you need to be a developer, but I think you can use a few cheats, okay? So what you want to do, the way I would solve it would be this way. I would create an abstraction of the fetching of the information and the exporting or importing of the information on the other side. So I would kind of create like this intermediary format that kind of works everywhere else. And then the only things I need to write are adapters. So I need to write an adapter for Airtable of getting a table, of getting column names, of getting the data. But after I have those adapters, I format it into whatever, JSON or CSV or whatever format I like to use that I can then import into the other, data sources. It might not only be Airtable or Postgres. It can also be the Postgres to MySQL, or it could be another no-code database to another no-code database or other database. So you want to have all these adapters ready, and you want to abstract that. So that's the way I would solve it as an engineer. There is a lot of work to do here, but I think you can also use a lot of ChatGPT or Copilot helpers to get this done. Because I think that, especially if you can give it the documentation of them, I think you can create these adapters very rapidly. So I don't think it's a problem like we had 2 years ago where you had to write everything manually. I think you can use a lot of this new large language models to kind of create these adapters really quickly. So that's the way I would build it. Do you want me to talk a bit about the go-to-market?
Yes, but I just want to mention one thing about the product first on the technical side. I think that you should consider not building it as a complete application. So not something that's click and forget, but more as maybe a set of tools that you can use to do the migration for the customer. Because I don't think anyone's actually expecting a one-click thing here. We understand the complexity. So it will be like, oh, click a button, then yes, but I'm talking more on the product side of things here. So not how I would sell it, but the actual thing that you build doesn't have to be a complete click and forget system. It can be a set of ongoing tools. This creates the adapters. This collects the data. This creates the Postgres. This exports the data. And then it doesn't actually have to be a pipeline. It can just be a set of few tools that you have them like with you. And if it takes you 30 minutes,
you have a VA?
Not
have like a VA running them, or
not even a VA. If you can sell this, we could talk about the go-to-market in a moment. But if you can sell this for $4.99, like whenever somebody has to do it, it's worth a half hour of your time. Like, just do that.
Mm-hmm. So like a toolkit of migration. I'm thinking that a lot of the people that want to do this don't want to waste time, right? The customer I was working with, they wanted to get it quickly done. That's why they paid me. So the idea was, how can we do this really quickly? And I'm thinking the idea you gave is it might be a productized service. So we know that these things are very hard. Maybe you can say, give me the information of your input and output, and I'll just get it done. It's offloaded. We guarantee that the data will be safe, blah, blah, blah. And you can also charge more for it because it sounds like a service, right? And you can say, we guarantee, 2 hours and it's done, or something like that. That's very cool. I want to talk a bit about pricing before the go-to-market. I think that if you're doing the service thing, I think you can do something very interesting because first of all, you can up the price, right? So it's a service, it's not a SaaS. Secondly, you can also make the price correlated to the number of rows or data that you have moving from each side, right? So if you have a really big database, you can charge more. And I think that kind of works in my mind, unless it's a toolkit, right? If it's a toolkit, it's a flat fee price because you're doing all the work. But if you have servers in the background working on a lot of data, digesting, processing information, I think they need to pay for that.
So I disagree on both fronts, to be honest. And I think that the core premise here is that you're thinking because you built the tools, you got to charge less for it. I don't agree on that. I think that you can build a toolkit and use it yourself and still charge a fuck ton of money to be using it. Essentially, what I'm saying is build a toolkit, have a very good process where you click on a few buttons, you make a few deductions from the data, you collect information essentially, and then you make a few deductions, and then you run the toolkit, and then you provide the service. If it takes you a couple of hours of your time to go through all the QA stuff and yada yada and run through the toolkit, you can probably charge a couple $1,000 for it just for the migration, regardless of the size. And I think that's the core premise here. Essentially, the only time limitation you would have here is how much time it will take to extract the data out of Airtable, because you will be making API calls if you're not exporting the CSV, which means that it could take a moment to continuously get all the information. So I'm saying you should not price it according to the amount of rows, but you should price it according to the amount of time it will take you to extract all of those rows. So I'm saying if you think like for a 1 million row Airtable, right, it'll take you 4 hours. If for a 10 million row Airtable, it'll take you 12 hours. Then you charge by the amount of rows, sure, but from your perspective as the productized service, as the person who's running it, you're actually charging for the hours, your own time you like spent using and waiting for this toolkit to complete.
Because you're like a service, so it's an hourly. Yeah,
exactly. It's an hourly service. You build it as a contracting service. It says it takes us 12 hours to do a 1 million plus database, and it includes all the quirks that they might have. So they say we don't want the images compressed, or all the JSON fields must be new line delimited JSON. I don't know, whatever it is they want, and it includes that in your pricing. So you say we don't care. Every single quirk you have, no problems. 4 hours and it's done, but you charge the fuck out of that. So I think that's the premise here.
Let's jump into go-to-markets because I think we have a couple really cool ones. So I'll just rapid fire them and then maybe we can talk more about them. So one, the easy ones are the normal traditional SEO ones. I want to migrate this to this, programmatic SEO 101. That's easy. Second one is, I think you can do, this is a bit like you need to check the terms of service, but I think you can go to Fiverr and all these freelance websites and create a gig for all of these types of migrations, right? Airtable to Postgres, Airtable to MySQL, Airtable to whatever, Oracle. So have that as a Fiverr gig, and I think you're going to get a lot of information from there, a lot of leads, from there. And I would do, and the last idea that I had was doing something close to the UI bakery thing, where you're giving like a free tool that does the migration, but you're limiting it. So you're saying, if you're a small size business, we're going to do it for you for free. But if you get to a certain point, you do all of the setup, everything. And then at the end, it's like, oh, you need to pay this and this because you're over the limit. So I think that could also be like a growth channel because you could provide value for customers that are not relevant, right? They won't pay that much either way. And customers that would pay, they got in through that lead magnet.
So I'm thinking something else. I liked both of those ideas. I especially like the fact that you're creating some sort of one-off tool that people can click and kind of utilize at least for a subset of the data. But I thought collaborating with people who already have vested interest in the space is probably a good idea. So let's do some thinking process. Like, who cares about this shit? People don't need to migrate for some reason out of their Airtable. Why would that happen? That would happen because, for example, Airtable is no longer sufficient for a large amount of users because it's expected to handle a lot of requests. I can list a bunch of reasons why people would want to migrate. Okay, what happens when somebody wants to migrate from one place to another? They usually hire a consultant, or they do some sort of kind of spec, like a statement of work in-house for what needs to happen. And we need to figure out those cases. And I think this is actually best left as an exercise for the reader, as they say. because this is actually a very, like, if you've never done this before, it comes naturally to me in Agam. We've done that so many times over the years that it just works. But
Maybe just give them an example of the intent.
I'm going to give one way of doing it, but I think that it's really important that you kind of nurture and work on the skill of trying to figure out what your customer feels when they might need your service or your product. So what I usually do is
wait. Let's give the viewers 10 seconds to to think about that.
Do you know all the things? Have you asked ChatGPT already? So my main kind of way of thinking about it is I'm a people pleaser. I like people. I like talking to people. I like kind of be engaged with people. And mainly I like to hear about people's problems. So I do this imagination trick often that really, really helps for me. I'm thinking that I'm a new hire at a company, right? And as a new hire in the company, you want to impress the boss, right? You want to make sure that everybody knows you're the shit. You're the go-getter. You're the man, right? Right. So I do that, and I'm trying to think about a company that I potentially might be useful for me. So in this case, who uses Airtable? Maybe a new hip store, like people who use like cool tools, or like maybe an up-and-coming startup, right? Something like that. So I think about one of those potential companies. I put myself there and I'm saying, I'm the new intern coming to work for this company. I want to make shit done, get shit done, sorry. Not make shit, but get shit done. I would learn that there's some sort of problem with Airtable or something like that. And then I try to double tap on why there is a problem with Airtable. And in like the e-commerce store that's been using Airtable to manage all their internal orders, it might just be volume. So the company is expanding and the Airtable can't handle the volume. Or if it's like the bustling startups, maybe they need more, like users need less potential ways to fuck up the data, right? Basically have no write access, just to read access to users. And a bunch of stuff like that. So I'll basically build those things in mind and then figure out how I can get to those users on the other end. And then
you're basically doing role playing, right? That's like, you're a good D&D player. That's what
exactly. But to finish this off, because it's really important to me, the core premise of what I would look for customers of this type is figure out who actually needs to migrate Airtable out of it. Run through this process and then figure out at the end where these people are. Just cold message them on LinkedIn. They'll probably be there anyways. Again, they're hip startup people, so they're there. Cold message 25 of them on LinkedIn. From personal experience, works wonders. And just see if you can sell that as a service.
Just as a note, what Tom is referring to is if you're the poorest man LinkedIn sales navigator, where you just add a friend and add a note, and you have 300 characters, something like that, right? We're supposed to be,
the 50 maybe. I don't know.
Just, you don't have a lot. Just write a nice copy there, a nice messaging.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I think we can close with this. Thank you very much. It was a good one.
See you later.